for maybe 30 years or so, the property estate had been underinvested in. And while the BBC's own strategy had evolved, the buildings had just stayed stuck in a sort of several generations earlier time warp.
The way we design our buildings and the way we operate them can really affect the culture of the organisation and also the way we work.
We issued the brief to design a building that provokes smiles, and we then used an edict of wheels and Velcro for everything so that it's not screwed to the floor, it can move and flex.
The first 10 years of this journey has been taking the BBC from what many people regarded as a very stuffy, civil service driven organisation to now a much more modern 21st century, open plan, highly flexible, technology enabled organisation which can compete with the best.
You just look at the space, it's a beautiful building, the architecture is fantastic and it's fun to be here.
In the late 1990s, the BBC embarked on the most ambitious property programme in its history. The BBC was facing greater competition and technological revolution, bringing a demand for workplaces that can cope with the needs of the future without expensive reconstruction. The old buildings were no longer fit for purpose.
Look at Television Centre, which in its heyday was probably the most beautifully designed TV production house in the world, but that was in 1950. It wasn't intended to have wires all over it. It wasn't intended to have PCs everywhere. I think there was a general feeling that over the years too many buildings existed. In London alone there were 39 different buildings, and around the UK there was an estate of over 500 different properties, and that didn't really feel right.
Transforming the property portfolio cost-effectively and making sure the corporation remained at the forefront of emerging technology was going to be no mean feat. To best serve audiences, BBC Buildings also had to adapt to be more open and welcoming to licence fee payers. So the BBC came up with a radical strategy, the 2020 vision.
By a combination of selling those buildings we no longer needed, redeveloping the ones that we did want and making them modern and technologically savvy and as efficient as possible, and outsourcing the facilities management in order to make it cheaper, the net effect each year for the next 30 years was that the cost to the licence fee payer was coming down rather than going up.
Since 2000, the corporation has already disposed of 1/3 of the old estate. In line with the BBC's commitment to the nations and regions, it has delivered more than a dozen key new buildings across the UK, including the Mailbox in Birmingham, Leeds, Leicester, Norwich, Cambridge, and of course the iconic Pacific Quay, the new home for BBC Scotland.
I'm of course biased, but I think when we get visits from anyone, we have international visits almost every week from Scandinavian broadcasters, American broadcasters, Russian broadcasters, and they're all blown away with the building and the technology we have here. In the old building, for instance, we worked with tapes. A tape came in, and anyone who wanted to use that tape, it had to be copied and transferred to all the different departments. What we now have is it comes into the building, it's put into the system, and 700 people can simultaneously access that material and work on it. So for a big breaking news story, for instance, that's invaluable in terms of the speed with which you get it onto all the different platforms.
That technology includes video conferencing facilities.
The technology we have, video conferencing, etc., makes it a lot easier for places like Scotland, which is geographically distant from London, to cut down in travel and to interact with people in London in a much more easily, more regular way, which can only be good for the business.
Media City UK in Salford will be the new headquarters for BBC North.
You will actually physically be able to stand on the pavement and look in and see the sport presentation area. You can also see other radio studios and breakfast television from where that's broadcast.
The BBC will be at the centre of a vibrant new media quarter.
The fact that we don't own some of the facilities, we have to actually go out of our building, cross the plaza, to go into somebody else's building to make programmes. That's a change for the BBC. And the whole ethos was to have us on a campus, working with other organisations, other people, and to cross-pollinate ideas rather than a big ivory tower locked behind the front door. You never set foot outside it, and equally nobody can come inside it either.
The Cardiff Drama Village will be a beacon of sustainable construction and home to some of the BBC's landmark programmes such as Doctor Who, Casualty and Pobla Cum.
The level of interest and enthusiasm for this facility really is immense. So there's a sense of excitement, of vibrancy. The benefits of the Drama Village really are building on skill base that already exists in Wales. And there's a statement of commitment from the BBC.
The BBC's London operation will be focused in two key centres: Media Village in White City in West London and the redeveloped Broadcasting House in the heart of London.
It'll be the home for all of journalism, so news and global news as well as audio and music. And what that means is a better experience for the audience at the end of the day, because the output will be improved by having all those experts gathered together in one place. So a fantastic proposition there.
It's a very big building in quite a constrained location. It's a conservation area. We're surrounded by quite a lot of residential properties. We've got a Grade 1 listed All Souls Church in front of the building, so the building has to be sensitive to that. In addition to that, we've dug very deep. We've gone down 15 metres below ground, which is a very deep basement. We're right next to two tube lines, so we get vibration from the tubes through the building, and of course for studios that's not great, so there's been some amazing construction engineering to get around those problems.
Media Village offers flexible working space as well as in-house studio and editing facilities.
Well, at TVC you were often going external for your post-production or for meetings, and when you're here everything can happen in the same place.
You've got interesting hub areas, and the way that we've actually created the space so all departments can meet each other, greet each other.
I remember when Armando Iannucci was first looking at the thick of it, he had a restricted budget and decided to make that first series all in the media centre.
The BBC is endeavouring to make all its buildings as sustainable as possible.
In the design, we thought about recycling and environmental issues, so those things are taken very, very seriously. It's amazing to see how everybody has just warmed to it and welcomed it. So everybody is almost like a champion of recycle and environmental issues.
We are only halfway through delivering the 2020 vision. The next 10 years will bring more change, and technology will be at the heart of it.
A lot of the big changes we will see are around communications and portability, so mobile devices, people being able to do their job, wherever in the buildings or outside of the buildings. I think it allows people to work more flexibly, to work in a way that's more comfortable.
And the results are impressive.
By 2015, we'll have changed 60% of the entire estate from its 2000 sort of baseline and have got rid of 30% of the estate as well. But it's more about the renewal rather than the downsizing. The downsizing pays for the renewal. So we now have the ability within a few years to have 50% of our estate in London and 50% outside London.
New facilities are already bringing benefits to the BBC, making sure the corporation will continue to be the largest and best content producer in the world.
There's no point in building if it's not going to be used, so I'm really looking forward to seeing people in there.
If you compare what the BBC has achieved and is achieving to others, I think we're right up there and in the upper quartile.
We've designed fantastic spaces, we'll put great technology in, and then when the people move in, then it'll live and take off. And that's the exciting bit, to see what's going to happen.